What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. As we all know, in just a couple of days here, there's going to be a new meta update coming to the Go Battle League. With that comes some pretty big changes. There's some big nerfs, some big buffs, and if you don't know exactly all of what's coming in this new season, I made a video about it already. Make sure to watch that so you know what the meta is going to be looking like. But today, I wanted to showcase how to team build yourself in the Go Battle League, how to build teams from these new Pokemon, just so you don't have to wait for people like me to, team build and showcase videos on YouTube. You can try them out instantly day number one just by building your own teams. And also, team building allows you to have a little bit more of an understanding about teams you might be fighting against and figure out what other common Pokemon might pair with each other. So team building is a very good skill. Make sure that you know exactly what you're doing with this, because if you are a good team builder, it helps out quite a bit in the Go Battle League. But yeah, let's get into it and see exactly how to team build in the new season. So first things first, this website that I'm going to be using today is called pvpoke.com. It's one of the best, if not just the best resource you can really use as a PvP player. It has a lot of good resources such as a team builder. It has simulating battles, so you can basically just see how battles are supposed to play out between Pokemon. And then it also has just this rankings page where you can see all the good Pokemon in the season in any league that you might find. The first thing that I really want to do here is I want to preview the next season, so I'm going to swap over. As long as you click that button, you see a purple bar at the top of your screen, you're going to be good. Or if you're already in the new season, there's not going to be a bar there at all. It's just already going to be the new season. So if you're watching this in a couple of days, just ignore me. But if you're watching it right now, make sure that if you're following along that you have it on the new season, that you see this purple bar at the top. But yeah, so now we have a rankings of every Pokemon in the new Great League meta here. You could choose Ultra League, Master League if you want to, but we'll just be looking with Great League because I think Great League is going to be the most generic one to look at. And I think one of the best new Pokemon that you might want to team build around is actually going to be just Jumpluff, right? Jumpluff, one of the best Pokemon here, as long as Energy Ball is getting buffed like we think it is. Some of these energy counts, we don't know exactly where they're going to go with this from that moveset update. They're always super vague on what the energy is going to be. So Energy Ball, we're expecting to be 45 energy. If it's 50 energy, honestly, Jumpluff's probably not that good. But if it's 45 energy, Jumpluff's actually really strong. So I'm just going to be taking today and assuming all these energy counts on PvPoke are going to be correct. But yeah, Jumpluff, it's a Pokemon that I think a lot of people are going to want to try out to use, right? And when you see a Pokemon like Jumpluff, you want to find a good pairing with it, right? Anytime you want to team build in PvP, you want to build what is called a good core. A core is a group of two Pokemon that counter each other's weaknesses, Jumpluff being a grass and flying type Pokemon. It's weak to ice, quite a bit weak to ice, right? Both grass and flying are weak to ice type damage, but it's also weak to rock, weak to fire, not necessarily great into the steel types as well because you are resisted with all of your damage. So you want to have a Pokemon that can kind of deal with both. And I think one Pokemon, especially against the ice types and the fire types that is really strong right now, is obviously Licky Licky. We can see if we scroll down here just a little bit, there is also going to be a little bit of a suggested teammates page. And you can see suggested teammates, Corsola, Licky Licky right there. I guess I'm not wrong. Jellicent and Empoleon Feraligatr. That makes a lot of sense for what I was saying. You want to pair it with this Pokemon. So I'm going to go and just click on Licky Licky here, and it will bring you to the team builder. The team builder here is going to have a team right here with Jumpluff and Licky Licky. And this is going to showcase across the meta exactly what you're going to be good against and what you're going to be bad against. Really, all you need to pay attention to right now is the coverage right here. The coverage meaning what kind of Pokemon, like how good is your coverage into the meta, right? What kind of Pokemon are going to be bad against you? How many Pokemon are you going to be weak against? And having B tier coverage is really good. And that's only with two Pokemon already, right? We can have a third Pokemon on this team. So having B tier coverage with only two Pokemon means you have a really good core, and that the third Pokemon just needs to round out a few weaknesses to really make it into an A tier team. Everything else here doesn't matter, although, I mean, Jumpluff plus Licky Licky looks like a pretty good team already. And you can see here, we get to the meta scorecard. And again, if you don't know exactly how to read this, that is what I'm here for. This is going to be very helpful if you don't know exactly all the ins and outs of PvPoke, because this website is so helpful if you want to learn more in depth on PvP. So we can see here, these here are our Pokemon, right? Jumpluff and Licky Licky. These two Pokemon are the ones currently on our team. If we see a matchup here, like against Licky Licky, the purple means Jumpluff beats it, and the blue means Jumpluff loses to it, which is actually really counterintuitive, because Jumpluff actually, in the new season, if Energy Ball is as good as it's going to be, it can actually beat Licky Licky, and it actually still loses to Feraligatr, because Licky Licky, while it's doing a lot of damage to you with super effective rollout, you're still not doing a lot of stab damage. However, for Feraligatr, you have super effective, double super effective Ice Beam to one-shot you, so Jumpluff's still not amazing to that matchup. But you can kind of see, right, like an overview here of Pokemon that Jumpluff can beat. Jumpluff can beat the Licky Lickies. Licky Licky can beat the Feraligatrs. Both these Pokemon do kind of struggle against Tinkaton, as we can see here. So the final Pokemon on the team wants to be able to beat Pokemon like that Tinkaton, like Empoleon, it looks like, Corviknight, Shadow Empoleon as well. So really the steel types are going to be a little bit tricky. Medicham's a bit neutral into us as well. So the final Pokemon needs to kind of round out that weakness. And I think a Pokemon like Shadow Quagsire would do pretty well. In my opinion, that's probably what I would put as a third here. But we can also just scroll down all the way to the bottom. Here is more potential threats that you might be able to see. We talked about a few already, but these are some that might not have already been showcased. These are going to be the most common Pokemon that you can be kind of weak to. So a couple other threats are like Dugong, Clodsire, Shadow Galarian, Weezing as well could be kind of neutral into you. So seeing these Pokemon and knowing that the final Pokemon wants to beat these Pokemon, that's going to be important. But I think Shadow Quagsire is looking pretty good into all these. So that right there does seem like a pretty good third Pokemon to run. But before we end up actually just going for that and adding that into our team, we can also look at more suggestions here at the bottom. These are potential alternative Pokemon you can add. You can see Jellicent at the top of the list. Jellicent would do a pretty good job at beating most of those picks. Stunfisk, Galarian, we have Grumpig, Aegislash, Clodsire, a lot of good picks, right? Is Quagsire on this list? It is not actually, so I guess Quagsire, maybe I'm a spicy trainer. It's hard to say. But we can go all the way back up to the top here, and we can add the final Pokemon to our team, Quagsire. And I'm going to do Shadow Quagsire because I feel like Shadow Quagsire is fun, and I'm going to put Stone Edge on it because I feel like if you're running Mud Bomb in a Jumpluff meta, you are just asking to get RPS'd. So yeah, that's what we're going to go for here. We'll go for Rate Team once again, and we'll see. Look at that. We go up all the way to A tier coverage. That means there's almost no Pokemon in the game that you don't at least have a little bit of play into. So Shadow Quagsire here is able to round out that Tinkaton weakness, rounds out Empoleon, rounds out Corviknight, rounds out Empoleon, but it is still a little bit soft into Medicham, so, you know, that is fine. You can't always be strong to everything, right? It's impossible to build a perfect team in the Go Battle League that covers for every single Pokemon in the game. There's honestly just so many picks out there right now that are good and that are hard to cover for, but a team like this, you're going to beat most of everything you could see, or at least have play into most of everything you could see, so this team is looking really good right now. The only weaknesses that we see here are Cradilly, which Cradilly is really rare right now, especially I don't think it's going to be good in the next season. There are so many steel types at Wallet, so that's a fine Pokemon to be weak to. Medicham as well. A lot of ghost types around in the meta. I think Medicham is going to be a little bit less common. You're actually a little bit soft to Jumpluff itself, so maybe that could be a little bit scary, but I think this is still kind of deceptive because you do have super effective acrobatics in the mirror. You have Licky Licky with Rollout. You have Stone Edge on Quagsire. So it's a very playable matchup nonetheless. And then everything else, you at least have like one Pokemon that has a very winning matchup into, and you have most matchups here that are going to be at least kind of playable for all Pokemon. So right there, that is a good way to build a team around Jumpluff, is you just kind of see the Pokemon that you want to use, you cover it with a core like Licky Licky, and you add a third Pokemon that rounds out those weaknesses. Now, the next step to building a good team is not just about having 3 Pokemon with a perfect coverage, because you can do that, you can have the perfect coverage all you want, but a team might still not be good. For example here, I'm going to put in a team with, like, I don't know, Shadow Fortress. We'll do Gastrodon, because we're going to go full-on RPS, alignment gaming, and I guess why not? We'll do Wigglytuff, just because we don't care about any flexibility whatsoever. But these 3 Pokemon, they probably cover each other pretty well, right? Yeah, I mean, B-tier coverage, not quite as good as the other team that we just made, but I mean, I'm also just making this team on the fly, but you can see this, a lot of good coverage into the meta. It's not a team that has a lot of huge weaknesses, right? And so it's a good team. But the thing that's bad about it, as I was talking about, is this team is not very flexible. Every team, in my opinion, needs something known as a safe swap. A safe swap is a Pokemon that you can use and switch in once you're in a bad spot. If you get a bad lead, you can swap it in, and against most Pokemon that you'd be fighting against, you'd have play into. So let's take a look at what good safe swaps are looking like right now in Pokemon Go. Alright, so let's go over a list of Pokemon that you can use as safe swaps here in the next season. This is not going to be an all-inclusive list. There's probably Pokemon that I'm going to leave out here that you could use if you really wanted, but because I don't want to go through, I don't know, 1,000 Pokemon right now, I'm only going to give you a list of a couple Pokemon to use and explain why they are good safe swaps. Up first, it's going to be Licky Licky, the bulky normal-type Pokemon. We all know and love it. I was just talking about it a second ago. The best thing about this Pokemon is its bulk, but also its pacing, right? It only takes 3 rollouts to get to a Body Slam, so that pacing up energy is one of the best honestly situations you can have on a safe swap right now in the Go Battle League. You also have great coverage with Shadow Ball, and with your bulk, with only being a normal type weak to fighting type damage, you are so safe right now. As long as you swap in Licky Licky, there's almost nothing that can just straight up beat you. You're always going to have a little bit of play. Up next for Alligator, going to be another very safe Pokemon. For Alligator, a straight water-type Pokemon, which means you are weak to Grass and Electric, but with access to having a lot of damage with Hydro Cannon, as well as Shadow Claw as your fast move, you have pretty good coverage just off of that. But Ice Beam is your bread and butter, gives you super effective damage into the Dragons, as well as the Grass types, that would generally counter Water types in the first place. So your coverage on Feraligatr, as well as your raw offensive pressure, because Feraligatr is a lot more offensive than a Pokemon like Licky Licky, it gives you a lot of play. Next, we have Shadow Quagsire, or even regular Quagsire could work. Quagsire is a very safe Pokemon. Once again, it is only weak to grass typing because it has a water and ground type, so we're kind of seeing a trend here, right, where these safe swaps have very few weaknesses, or the weaknesses that they do have, you have Play Into. So since you are a Quagsire, you have Stone Edge that can fight against the flying type Pokemon, you have Aqua Tail that's so spammy, you have Mud Shot that doesn't do a lot of damage, but that energy generation is crucial. Quagsire is an amazing safe swap right now in the meta. Empoleon up next is going to be another Pokemon, kind of like Feraligatr. It's going to be a little bit worse defensively as a Pokemon with a few more weaknesses. You are weak to ground, electric, fighting, a couple of types that could be a little bit more common, but Empoleon has a great defensive typing against a lot of other things. That sub-steel typing is really helpful. Metal Sound as a fast move is not the most efficient, but Hydro Cannon is amazing. Drill Pet coverage as well means that you're a water type that has a lot of play into the grass types. Kingdra going to be a pick that you can also use in the new season. This thing's actually getting buffed, which is why I'm putting it on this list. Kingdra is going to have access to Surf, making it a lot more consistent. It's going to have a lot quicker pacing to a very decent damaging move. You have Swift for your pacing as well. Kingdra's only real weakness is going to be against fairy types. As long as you're avoiding the fairy types, you're in a good spot. But even into the fairies, you have that Surf coverage, which is going to be just a little bit better for you. So I feel like Kingdra rather, is going to be a pretty good Pokemon, although I did just spoil it here. Seeking, also another Pokemon that's going to be pretty good in the next season. Seeking is getting buffed by having Drill Run decreased in energy. It's going to get a little bit of a decrease in damage as well, but you don't really care about that as much. It's mainly just the pacing that you get on Drill Run now is going to be so much better, and having ground, ice, and flying type coverage on a Pokemon like Seeking, as well as debuff potentials with Icy Wind, it gives you a lot of play. I feel like Seeking is a very good Pokemon just as a safe swap next season. Malamar is up next, and Malamar, a big favorite of mine. I use it in a lot of videos. Whenever I want to try hard, Malamar is almost always a safe swap that I consider using. The big drawback of Malamar right now is people have swapped over to Bug Bite Shadow Fortress, and that is a pretty bad matchup for you. You just get kind of shredded in just a couple of seconds in that matchup. But any other matchup, even against the fairy types, your side waves add up a lot. Having Superpower, which is kind of rare fighting type coverage in the meta right now, is amazing, and having dark type damage with your Foul Play just as consistent neutral damage is also amazing. So Malamar, pretty good safe swap. Another Sidewave user here, we have Lapras. I guess we're just doing a lot of water types on this safe swap list. Obviously, water types are some of the best Pokemon in GBL right now. It makes sense a lot of them would be safe swaps. There's a couple more coming, so just you wait. But Lapras, it's a lot bulkier than Pokemon like Seeking. You have Sidewave as a coverage move for your fast attack, which is great against the fighting type Pokemon you might otherwise see. You have Ice Beam as well, which is good against the dragons. You have Sparkling Aria for a lot of neutral play, and even some of Lapras's worst matchups, like against Empoleon and Jellicent, they're not as bad as you'd expect. You're getting walled off with your energy, but Lapras is just so bulky, and you have so much damage with your one-turn fast attack that it doesn't really matter. Celio as well, another water and ice type Pokemon you can make use of if you really want to. Celio's biggest thing about it is that it has great pacing, a little bit better than Lapras, and you have Body Slam, which is going to hit neutral for other water types. Water is one of the best typings right now in the meta, so having that neutral damage, unlike Lapras, does give you a little bit more play, although having a little bit less coverage against the fighting type Pokemon is a little bit scarier. But I think Celio is an amazing Pokemon. I'm going to be excited to see what it does in the next season, but I think it's going to be a pretty good safe swap. Yet another Sidewave user coming up next is going to be Grumpig. Similarly to Malamar, the Bug Bite users are a little bit bad for you, but you're just a Psychic type, right? Not a Psychic Dark type. You're not quite as weak to that Bug type damage, so Grumpig does have a lot of play into them, but unlike Malamar, you're actually going to be weak to Ghost types as well as Dark types, so you're going to have to watch out for that. But you have almost perfect coverage. Having both Ghost and Fighting type charge attacks means unless you're fighting a Hisui and Zoroark for some reason, your damage is going somewhere, and you have Sidewave as well as a fast move. It's a lot of damage output. The only problem is straight Psychic is not the best defensive typing, but offensively you have so much pressure that you're likely getting a shield advantage against almost anything if you use it as a safe swap. Sableye up next as a safe swap. The best thing about this Pokemon is Wigglytuff, which is his worst matchup by far, is getting nerfed in this season. So Sableye going to be a very safe Pokemon. You safe swap this thing, it's only weak to Fairy type damage, and as long as there's no Fairy normals running around, then you're a Pokemon that has a lot of neutral play, and I have actually seen a couple people running Drain Punch recently. Drain Punch giving you that fighting type coverage as well, meaning that you could have Ghost, Fighting, and Dark coverage on one Pokemon here. Sableye is a very interesting pick, and I feel like especially with Wigglytuff going away, it's going to be a pretty safe Pokemon. Drapion, a pick here that's going to be a bit of a blast from the past. I'm not quite sure how good it's going to be in the next season, but it's a Pokemon that always does have play because your energy generation is so quick. You're only weak to ground type damage. You have Aqua Tail to cover that ground type weakness. It could be an interesting idea, although I'm not quite sure how current it's going to be as a good Pokemon, but it is an option. You have Furret, which is a Pokemon with a lot of neutral pressure with Sucker Punch as well as Swift. You have Trailblaze or Brick Break as a coverage attack, kind of like Licky Licky. Defensively as a normal type, you're in a pretty good spot against most Pokemon, and you have a lot of different options for coverage. Dusknoir, another one of these picks with great coverage, Ghost and Fighting type charge attacks with Dynamic Punch and Shadow Punch. You're a little bit more RPS than a Pokemon like Malamar, saying that you're a pick that doesn't have like a different typing fast move. You're relying a lot on Ghost type damage, so a normal type could kind of be a little bit scary for you. But if the normal type that counter swaps into you is like a Licky Licky, then you still have a lot of play thanks to Dynamic Punch. And then Fearow, I feel like, is another great safe swap right now. In the new season, it's going to have that Drill Run buff just like Seeking. So keep an eye out for that Pokemon. Flying and ground type damage, some of the best coverage you can really ask for. And up energy, Fearow is going to outpace a lot of Pokemon. So I feel like Fearow is a great way to just have a bit more of an offensive Pokemon that also isn't quite as similar to some of these other Pokemon that we've already talked about. So yeah, if you want to build a team, now that we have safe swaps in mind, all you have to do is you have to figure out what Pokemon you want to use, right? Another Pokemon I think people are going to be trying out a little bit is going to be Ninetales, specifically the Kanto Ninetales, another Pokemon with that Energy Ball buff, right? So when we think about Ninetales, we think about a Pokemon that's going to be weak to water, it's weak to ground, weak to rock, not great into dragons as well. So you want a Pokemon that can kind of cover all of those weaknesses, and if you want to see Pokemon that are going to be great with it, again, we can just kind of go down here if you're not quite sure, and we can see suggested teammates. Water types make a lot of sense. They kind of beat most of those options. And Licky Licky, Kingdra, a lot of safe Pokemon here already going to be recommended. Let's just say Kingdra, just for fun. Let's want to try out a couple of new Pokemon here. It's already got pretty good coverage on the team. And we can take a look at their coverage here. We're only weak to a few Pokemon. Galarian Corsola just going to be kind of neutral into us. It's not even that bad. Altaria could be a little bit scary, saying that Ninetales is walled by it, and Kingdra is a Pokemon that does end up taking quite a bit of damage from Dragon Breath, but that's not the end of the world. You have a lot of play there nonetheless. And yeah, looks like a pretty good core here already. Only went to like Cradilly, Florges, Morpeko, Guzzlord, Galarian, Corsola, Altaria. Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty manageable Pokemon, right? And there's nothing here that's just going to completely beat you. So we can take a look at exactly what kind of Pokemon they suggest as a third here. We have Pokemon like Tinkaton, Stunfisk, a lot of Steel types, right? A lot of Pokemon that can take down those fairies or potentially take down the dragons, so Steels do make a lot of sense here. You can also run with a Pokemon like a Seeking as well if you want to have a bit more of a safe pick. And you can run a Pokemon like Galarian Corsola yourself, Licky Licky. All of these options would work with the team. And that's the best thing about this website. You have a lot of different options here. I'm a basic meta slave, so I'm going to say Licky Licky because that is just the kind of guy that I am. And we can take a look at how this team's going to look now. Again, pretty good coverage here. There's going to be still a few things that you're a little bit soft to, but it's not going to be anything crazy. You're going to be weak to Morpeko. Honestly, that's kind of like... That's just Morpeko simming really well. It's not going to sweep the whole team, right? We have a lot of consistent damage into it. Cradilly, a Pokemon we don't see too often, but again, you have a lot of neutral damage against that Pokemon. Guzzlord, sure. I mean, that's kind of neutral into us as well, but I feel like Guzzlord's also not a super common pick. You're not weak to Pokemon like, I don't know, you're not weak to Licky Licky here. You're not weak to Quagsire, to Feraligatr. And having coverage against those top Pokemon is way more important than having, like, perfect coverage against these kinds of picks. So again, we've kind of made, like, a really good team here around Ninetales and Kingdra as the core, Licky Licky as a safe swap, or honestly, you could go like the Ninetales Licky Licky core and use Kingdra as a safe swap. It's always flexible. You don't always have to go with straight up one Pokemon is always the safe swap. As long as you know it's a safe Pokemon, then you can make sure that you can use it. So yeah, these are just kind of the strategies that you want to use when team building. Any Pokemon you can use that for. It doesn't have to be a meta Pokemon. In fact, like if you wanted to try out Lopunny, again, we can try out Lopunny because it's getting a double buff here. Low Kick, Thunder Punch, Shadow Ball. I mean, Low Kick it already had, but Thunder Punch and Shadow Ball, two new additions to its moveset here. We can take a look at, once again, what are great additions, what are great teammates for Lopunny. You're going to be just a straight normal type Pokemon, weak to fighting type damage. So you can kind of understand why Pokemon here, like Cresselia, Charge Bug, Jumpluff, Feraligatr are all suggested, because Feraligatr, great into Annihilate, which is the main fighting type in the meta. Cresselia, Charge Bug, Jumpluff, all resisting fighting type damage. I don't know why Licky Licky is here getting suggested with a Lopunny. That would be a little bit extremely weak to fighting type damage, but like, I guess that's an option you could go with. But let's say we want to use Feraligatr here on the team. That's always an option. We can click on that. Pretty good coverage. It looks like across the board. We probably want to have... Oh man, Lopunny doesn't beat Licky Licky. That's sad. But we probably want to have like Pokemon that can kind of round out a few of the weaknesses here. What's like a real Pokemon that we're weak to? Actually, this core looks pretty good. That's crazy. But we are a little bit soft, like, neutrally to a few of, like, the more spammy Pokemon in the game. Also weak to Wigglytuff. Hopefully that thing's not around as much in the next season after the nerf. But you probably want to have a Pokemon that's just pretty spammy with a good neutral game. Maybe a little bit of bulk on it, too. So a Pokemon like Jumpluff, yeah, there we go. That's a perfect third Pokemon to run here. So you can actually just run like the Lopunny Jumpluff core for Alligator safe swap, and perfect. You have a team that's looking really strong into the meta. Let's take a look. Let's make sure the coverage is looking good. Yeah, you have a good Lopunny team. Straight up right here. Maybe I'll use it. Who's to say? It looks like a pretty good team. What are you weak to? You're weak to the Shadow Ninetales? Yeah, kind of. It's crazy to see a Feraligatr team weak to Ninetales, but that's just because Energy Ball in the new season is going to be very strong. But you have a lot of play against the Ninetales still anyway. Weezing, Wigglytuff, Fearow, they're all kind of playable here for the team. So it's not completely unplayable. I feel like this is a good team. And I feel like this could work out. So it's just kind of a showcase of how to team build here in Pokemon Go using this website and just kind of figuring out what Pokemon are already going to be pairing well with each other and using these connections to try to figure out not just what you should pair with your Pokemon, but trying to read teams in the middle of battle. If you know that, like, oh, I tried to team build around a Jumpluff before, I know what Jumpluff's weak to. It's probably gonna be like a Licky Licky or a Quagsire in the back line, maybe a Feraligatr. Then you can know how to plan ahead and how to play the Go Battle League just a little bit better. But yeah, let me know if you guys enjoyed this video. I could make more videos like this in the future that are more of just like tutorials rather than just straight up gameplay videos if that would be helpful for you guys. I don't know. I am more so doing this because this new season is coming out soon. There's a lot of big changes, and I know people are going to want to try out a lot of these new Pokemon, and I can't make videos for every single one as quickly as I'd like. But yeah, thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.